What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel MovieFiles. Tonight, we are here to talk about the premiere episode of the new Sam Levinson show by the name of The Idol, episode 1, which was interesting. We will be getting into my thoughts here in a second, but I want to know your thoughts in the comments. What worked? What didn't work? What were some things that stood out to you from a story perspective, a performance perspective, direction, narrative, all of those things? Let's talk about in the comments section. My initial impression of this series before we break it down, then I'll get into my thoughts, get into the series. This is a pretty subpar, mediocre premiere episode, especially coming from Sam Levinson, who is the show creator, who is the writer, director, collaborated with The Weeknd because this was his idea. He brought it to Sam Levinson, I believe. And if you guys watched the after show of episode 1, they kind of talked about the origins of the show, that it was The Weeknd. He called Sam Levinson to his house. He pitched him an idea. And, here we are talking about the show. So, again, if you are familiar with Sam Levinson work like I am, Assassination Nation, of course, Euphoria, which we'll get into here in a second, Malcolm and Marie, which was, I really enjoyed that film on Netflix. And he's done some other projects. But the reason I say I was slightly think it was mediocre or subpar is because if you go back to Euphoria season 1, go back to Euphoria season 2, regardless of your thoughts on Sam Levinson, like narratively speaking, he's a very auteur director in a sense of he has a very, particularly the visual effects, right? His visuals tell a story within the story of the narrative. So kind of on that visual note, I found it to be very flat just from a visual presentation. I didn't see anything nothing that really caught my attention. Nothing that was like, whoa, that's a cool kind of visual representation of this idea the character's going through, of this particular, mindset they're in. So I found it flat and visually speaking, especially again, going from Sam Levinson, but then also narratively speaking, it was pretty much things that we might have seen before on, shout out to VH1 back in the day, like Behind the Music or, certain shows or reality shows we've seen on MTV or whatever the case may be, where you have Jocelyn, who's a pop star, who thought it was going to be the origins of her becoming a pop star. And then she comes across The Weeknd and, he controls her career, but she's already established. I don't know if they necessarily say how long she's been in the industry, but it sounds like she's been doing this for, I would say, at least over 5 to 7 years. And as we'll talk about the breakdown, she's had some ups and downs and some career issues or what have you. But narratively speaking, it just seemed like things that we've seen before. And I don't really know what this is. Of course, this is episode 1. We're going to get more episodes to kind of explore that. But from an episode 1 perspective, it just seems pretty straightforward and nothing too unique or too different from stories that we've seen before. But I got a guest that's going to be joining me here that just popped in the back room. He joined me on the Succession discussions. He's joining me tonight to talk about this episode, and I'll follow up where I was just going off of and obviously get my guest's thought. But 9, what's going on, man?
Hey, what's up?
Hey, man, just hey, I was getting right into the meat of it, man. Just kind of beginnings of this this show and this episode, man. How you doing, Don? How are we doing on this evening?
I'm doing good. I'm doing quite well, actually.
Yeah.
Had a great weekend. Can't believe we went from Succession to this, but such is life, right?
Hey, man, this is the spinoff of the Disgusting Brothers. We're gonna get a cameo from Greg and Tom interacting with Jocelyn.
I don't even know if they can handle this, but
yeah.
Who knows?
We talked about it previously. I'm a Sam Levinson. I've been following his career since Assassination Nation, Euphoria, Malcolm and Marie, and he has a very visual style to him. He tends to really capture me with his visuals, but I found the story in this episode to be kind of flat for a premiere episode, especially if you've seen Euphoria. His premieres are like, whoa, they catch you right off the bat.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it was
I gotta say,
flat. Your thoughts?
I gotta say, I was waiting for something to happen, but it felt like it was just that. That was really the only thing that's going for. It's like, oh, this looks really nice and well shot, but what's actually happening? What am I supposed to be caring about here?
Yeah, it was, and then narratively, as we'll talk about, it was just, not a lot going on. But, for those that are watching that might not be too familiar, I'm pretty sure if you're watching this video, you are familiar with the backstory as far as the behind the scenes. But now, this show definitely was a show that had a lot of controversy. And you guys can look it up if you're not too familiar with it. There's definitely a level of, a sexuality that makes people uncomfortable, and especially when it's handled in media. And yeah, I thought it was, I wouldn't say tamed, but I thought it was, from what I was hearing getting into the series, I'm thinking, we're about to watch porn on HBO. Right, it's going to be Skinamax. And by all means, there are moments, and we'll talk about the Jocelyn and Tedros hooking up later in the episode. And, obviously the photo that got online is definitely not something I would recommend kids watching. But yeah, I thought it was it wasn't as shocking as I was led to believe. Now, of course, we have several episodes. I believe episode 2 is when they mentioned that there is a scene or two that might be considered to be very uncomfortable. But yeah, as far as episodes 1 go and being provocative or being too shocking, it didn't really, you know, I don't know if that speaks anything that's really desensitized towards it, but I didn't find it to be too crazy. But again, we'll get into it here. But open this episode with meeting our lead character. Or is this opening scene 9? She shows us a little bit of her range in this scene, right? Jocelyn is told as she's doing this photo shoot for her up-and-coming album to smile, to laugh, to be more sexual, to cry to her audience, how she can just turn it on like a switch, cut it off, and she kind of breaks out of the character when she's playing Jocelyn within this opening scene, and when cameras are rolling or done, she's just right back into it. So what did you think about just kind of Lily and her performance, and just any things you took away from this first scene that kind of spoke to her character?
That opening scene was like, it gave me hope a little bit. I was like, okay, like I do like that, you know, right up front. Let's see her portray all of these different emotions where like we're really getting into her psyche, and she's kind of like surrounded by all of these other, you know, bees that are just working around her or whatever. Yeah. And I did like that. And again, it's just like really like pleasantly shot, right? Like, and it's zooming out, and you kind of like see more and more of her life. And I like that, like you could see like little pieces of her identity on the table and on the shoot around her. So like if you're not paying that much attention, then you're going to miss out on a lot of like the little character traits that are going on with her character. Or like her little bit of a backstory, because it's almost like right there all on the table as you start to zoom out. Like there's, you know, the record, the golden record. There seems to be some like drug paraphernalia on the table. Again, there's like a hospital wristband or whatever. And then she's also looking like glamorized or whatever. So like, you're like, oh, you could see like there's like a past, or she's getting over something. So I really did enjoy that first like shot. And then we kind of get a descent from there.
I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. Now you hit the nail on the head as far as this opening scene. Number one, as we talked about from a performance standpoint, if people aren't too familiar with work, I think within this first, you know, 2-3 minute opening, you kind of get to see the range from, again, smiling, happy, sad. But like you mentioned, as you pan away from her, you see the chaos surrounding her, right? The people, the yes men and yes women, people that are just, you know, all the stuff going on behind the scenes. And as we'll talk about, one of her photos getting leaked on Twitter. But again, it's a lot going on. But what I focused on was Lily's performance. And it was something, you know, it's not Emmy winning, but I'm like, okay, she's showing us there's more to Jocelyn than just a pretty face. There's more to her than just, you know, the superficial nature to what we come to assume of pop stars, as this show even alludes to a Britney Spears later on in the episode. And they bring up Prince a little bit later in the episode. So we have this illusion, and this would intrigue me about the show besides Sam Levinson and HBO. I used to be a big music person growing up as a kid. I don't really like engage in new music, and I guess I'm just getting older, so like old head, all this music now and then. I don't really. There's a couple of artists that I listen to that are new, but I mostly go back to stuff that I listened to when I was a kid and growing up in high school. I was never too interested in the pop era, but I still think even whether it's Jay-Z or, you know, Eminem, people I listen to, or Pac growing up, there's this kind of facade or this image that we have of them in our heads, and we kind of create this narrative in our heads. But I think what I'm going to be hopefully interested in the show is seeing what it does to a person when they have to be on, when they have to put on this front, when they have to put on the smile and pretend they're being happy and things of that nature. So I'm hoping, and again, within this first scene, I hope this is more of what we get from the character, as far as just like it's an on and off switch, but what's really going on deep down with this character.
Just wonder, like, if they're going to be able to tell that story differently than what we've seen before in the past.
Right.
What do you think would be kind of like the defining factor of like making sure that it is different and unique?
Well, I think I'm hoping that this show, with the influence of The Weeknd, who is a pop star in his own right. I don't really listen to his music like that. I know his like singles, but I don't really know too much about, I believe his real name is Abel. I don't really know too much of the person behind the music. So I'm hoping that and of course this is a female perspective, but I'm hoping that his experience as a pop star in the industry is somewhat the authenticity of kind of what he lives that life. He's lived that versus, you know, a writer or director that just assumes this is the lifestyle of a pop star. So I'm hoping that his experience and The Weeknd by all means is a huge star. Even if I don't listen to him, I'm very well aware of how huge he is as a pop star. So I'm hoping that his influence in the show allows us to get that insight that we might have never really dove into with the superficial Hollywood glitz and glamour and what we assume is a pop star lifestyle. I'm hoping that his experience is somehow exposed in the show to bring, like I said, some of that authenticity that we might have never seen on a TV show or movie. As you kind of alluded to, Nine, a little bit earlier, we kind of see her, different people that surrounds Jocelyn, which, by the way, like I mentioned earlier, I'm assuming that she's been a pop star for a while. Not like, I think she's probably in her mid-20s, but I think that she was a young Britney Spears, you know, 16, 17, and now she's like 24, 25. So I think she's been doing this for a bit. And you can just tell that all these people, we have her publicist, we have her manager, they're just there to just take everything from this young lady, right? The one in the middle, which, you know, we're big Atlanta fans. I
was going to call that out. Yeah, Alonzo.
Yeah, she definitely has a character. Her name's Nikki Jane Adams here. She's definitely a character that just wants to manipulate Jocelyn or take advantage of certain situations. Oh yeah, be more provocative. Give them, if she wants to show her tits, let her show her tits. Like she's pleading into the chaos.
Out of pocket. She was going a little bit crazy with those quotes.
And that's just one example of these managers and these PR people that aren't necessarily looking out for the person. They're looking out for their pockets and looking out how can we monetize off of her, as we see in this scene. It's not fully explained, but she just left the hospital. She apparently had a mental breakdown. If you've had and again, there's, you know, this is what separates these mega stars or athletes from the normal person, is like, if we have a mental breakdown, we might be off of work for 2 or 3 weeks, but for someone that's in the limelight, they have to get back on the limelight. They have to stay in the limelight. They have to stay in the conversation. So as we see her doing this photo shoot for an album, she has, as you mentioned, her hospital wristband still on her. And Nikki's talking about, oh, mental health is sexy. You know, having, you know, people that are a little bit unhinged is the it thing. Right, you wanna it gets.
She would never sleep with you if she didn't have something completely fucked up about her. Yeah,
exactly.
And yeah, I mean, they're all like vultures, right?
Exactly.
And it almost seems like they don't really have like any real job or anything else to contribute to that, but they're going to get their check. Exactly. Now I was getting like a little bit of a maybe this is the wrong person, but I was getting a little bit of like a Miley Cyrus type of vibe from the situation.
Another artist who I know of her, but I didn't really follow her career. But yeah, she went from Disney to kind of being a pop star, and she got a little bit like, hey, this is, you know, a little bit more raunchy style. But yeah, no, I can see that for sure. To that point of Miley Cyrus, I know her dad for a while was very integral to her, because I know Billy Ray Cyrus was a singer in his heyday.
Right.
I'm very curious on who her parents are in the show, because it was a line later by The Weeknd who says to her, did you make this song after your mother? I'm assuming her mother's dead or
deceased or maybe
hospitalized, maybe.
Life.
Yeah. So I wonder, like, if her mom was like a vulture of a sense and latched onto her daughter and made her put out the music at a very young age, and she's kind of spiraling out of control with her mother not there. And again, I don't know if her mother was a good influence or a bad influence to her mother of it all. I wonder if her father was involved. So again, it's those little, like you mentioned earlier, a little subtle character moments, little line here and there that gives you a little bit of the backstory without fully telling you everything in the first episode. That makes you a little bit intrigued. Like, oh, what's going on there with the family situation? Now, again, if you all follow Sam Levinson, especially Euphoria, it definitely is a show that doesn't hesitate to show ass and titties and penises and very, very show. I found this to be almost a meta moment from Sam Levinson, because there are moments in the show, or at least from the outside perspective, that people criticize Euphoria about. Like Sydney Sweeney, for example, especially in season 2, she was naked the whole season. Her boobs were out like almost every episode. After the pandemic, there was like people wanted to have like intimate coaches on sets for people to not only feel, you know, number one, with a social distancing, but with sexual scenes to make sure that the artists and the actors are comfortable with whatever sexual scene that they're, you know, involved with. And I don't know if this is a meta nature here with this intimate coach who's telling the team and telling Jocelyn to, you know, slip the nip or keep her nipples inside, because right now this shoot isn't meant to be as provocative as an older work. So I don't know. Now, did you take anything away from intimate coach and that whole scene? And again,
yeah,
the whole team's like, no, let her be
right.
she wants to be.
I honestly think that this may be like where people are like a little bit too. I can't even say that, like, you know, the intimacy or like the you know, nudity is like overly too graphic or something that we haven't seen from him before. But again, you got to have the content, the quality of like the storyline to really grip people where it actually justifies it, or else it becomes like a kind of lame porno.
I think this is one of the first moments that the show, when you're like, oh, okay, because I had heard briefly about what one of the, I don't know, I didn't find it to be that shocking, but the moment of the show where you're like, oh, okay, this is where we're getting a little bit, maybe a little more edgy. So a photo hits the internet on Twitter. So a leaked photo of Jocelyn being very, let's say, intimate with someone, and they pleasure themselves on Jocelyn, to say the least. What do you think about this plot point of Jocelyn being out there to the public and how the team was trying to handle it?
I was a bit curious about like that whole thing, just because it seemed like she purposely put the picture out there.
That's what I was going to ask you next.
It was just kind of like a little wild, because I feel like we hear about it so much with like all different pop stars or whatever. It almost seems like a non-issue at this point. I mean, you can damn near say that it's like oh, it's an AI generated image right now, and probably just like get away with that too. Right? But it didn't seem like the character themselves, Jocelyn, was actually very affected by it. And you know that she may have been like just putting on an act and feeling something, you know, more internal, but I don't think we saw that either. So I'm really interested to know if that's like even going to be a thing that gets followed up in the future, or if we're going to like learn about like, you know, whoever leaked it, or if that's going to be a significant part. Her friend, her friend was like kind of like my favorite part of the show, to be honest.
Yeah, which, I mean, let's just talk about Rachel Sennett, who hit the scene a couple years ago with an independent film that hit the circuits. Shiva Baby, I think, was the name of it. And she was recently, and I didn't really like the film, but she was a highlight. Bodies. She was the best part of that film to me.
I still need to check that out now.
It was okay. I didn't really like it, but that's another conversation. But Rachel Sennett, she plays, like you mentioned, her best friend. She's the assistant. I believe her name was Leia, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, she definitely brought the comedic relief. And to that point, now I'm wondering if, going back to if Jocelyn leaked it purposefully, do you think, I don't know, her friend who seems to always try to look out for her later in the episode when she's trying to get her from you know, the Weeknd, and telling her she has to be at work at 7 a.m. She's trying to get her water at the club. Do we think that her best friend is someone that is I don't know, taking advantage of her as well, and maybe she leaked the photo?
You know, that was the thing. Like, out of everyone that was obviously taking advantage of Jocelyn, it didn't seem that her friend truly was. It actually had like a little bit of concern, and you know, wanted to, you know, but again, like, that can all shift to a different perspective where we kind of see that, like, you know, at behind the scenes, her part, she's really just out for that check. That was a running joke throughout the episode. It's like, oh, that's your best friend and your assistant, or that's your assistant and your best friend. You know, it kind of gets like messy, and like the, you know, that makes a difference, right? That what you put first, how you label her first is world of difference.
Right.
But she did just have that little bit of comedic relief for the show. You know, which is good when it's feels like it can like laugh at itself. I think the show may need to take itself a little less seriously, or either more seriously and just be like a lot more intriguing. But yeah, I think her character just seems to be in that nice sweet spot.
Yeah, a lot of great stuff there you said, man. I'm very, because it could be very, like you mentioned, very hopefully on a surface level, it is authentic and she is a good friend she's looking out for. Very curious to know where this relationship stemmed from. Was she the assistant that just happened to be her best friend because she was the only one that was nice to her? Or if she was her best friend through high school, middle school, and then she happened to want to hire her later on, famously LeBron James, his whole team is mostly people that he grew up with from high school that he trusts. So I'm very intrigued to know if Layla is someone that we can, as an audience, because it seems like a lot of these people that's going to surround Jocelyn, including Jocelyn herself, will be characters that might be frustrating to follow throughout the series because they're doing bad things and they're making terrible decisions. So hopefully there's at least one character that as an audience we could say they got good intentions, and that hopefully being Layla, and we'll see what happens with her moving on. The first half to me, this is probably about 25-30 minutes of the first half of the show. We get the leak photo. They lock the coordinator in the bathroom. There is a Vanity Fair journalist is there to get some quotes from her because she has her album coming out, and obviously, as we said earlier, this photo is the talk of the town. This is where the episode to me was just kind of like, man, this seems like something I've seen before. There's nothing that's really like capturing me, locking me in. There's no particular, again, the photo was like, oh, I'm wondering how they're going to navigate through this. But like you just mentioned, they kind of just didn't take it as seriously as you would think, because it seems like that's probably something that Jocelyn, because as they make the running joke that it's really not that bad. So you can tell that she's probably done some other provocative things that may have leaked online before. So it was kind of just like a Tuesday for them. But yeah, this first half to me, and then we get the dance sequence where she was kind of not hitting the marks, and her friend, another friend of hers, the backup dancer, who I believe is I think she's actually like a famous pop star internationally. I think her name's like Jennie or something like that, or Jeannie. But yeah, what did you think about like this first half?
Now? Was that from Blackpink?
I figured she was from something. Very popular. K-pop band or something. Yep. So I mean, what did you think about again all that first half stuff from her, and then her turning on like a switch? She was able to hit the notes and dance and show everyone that she's not a screw up. And Eli Roth comes in randomly, who I think his film is pretty terrible. But what did you think about this first half so far, man?
I was like, okay, when is something going to happen? That whole time, right? And again, like the sexual provocativeness of that whole first half really did not entice me, or like it didn't like offend me when I was hearing about like, oh, this show's going to be like offended. I was like, almost like, okay, like offend me, make me feel like something. But I didn't get any of that really from the first half of it. So I was just kind of like waiting for, something to happen. But it just seemed like a kind of setting point for us to get introduced to all of the main players in the show. And have people kind of like focus, meet up, kind of try to navigate whatever this new image is. And now we know who's in the show.
I couldn't agree with you more, man. Like, again, not trying to compare it to Euphoria, but I think of season 1, episode 1, the premiere, and when we met Rue for the first time, and how it was so dynamic, and you're just like, wow, this young Zendaya, number one. Talk about Disney earlier, someone that we've only, prior to Euphoria, we've never seen Zendaya in that light as far as more mature content. It was always kid friendly or Spider-Man or things of that nature. But then when you see her a drug addict and she's climbing on the walls, it was just like, this show is these teenagers. I never lived like that when I was a teenager, but it's so interesting. Like, where is this going? Like you just mentioned, this first half was just so like, this is this character, this is this character. And it just appeared to be very flat to me. And again, I know from again, watching the behind the scenes of this first episode, it seemed like there was a lot going on from behind the scenes as far as how they captured it. They had like 3 cameras rolling. It was like very fast paced dance sequence, conversation about her career, the Live Nation, Eli Roth character. Like, there's a lot going on, but there's nothing that's like intriguing me besides, like, again, the hook was, there's a photo out there of her having nothing's grabbing me in this first half besides, again, that first scene with her showing so many different sides of her. But besides that, man, nothing was really capturing me.
Like, if you're really into like choreography, then
that was pretty smooth.
Good. And I was just like, okay, there's like some skill going behind all this, I was like, oh, okay, it does seem like they, she can like really dance or whatever. And like, they actually did practice that and they got her into like idol form or whatever.
Right.
And I was like, that's kind of interesting, but like, it's just rehearsal or whatever.
Right.
So I'm not like, and what we don't really know who any of these characters are. So I'm like, oh, okay. So she just needs to perform well at rehearsal, and that's going to be like something that needs to happen. That's going to be like a win for her. I just didn't really care.
I think what I was hoping to get from that opening sequence was just more of, I guess, focus on Jocelyn. And I guess just kind of, pilling myself from how I wasn't engaged, but I guess from what they were trying to go for. And I think you even said it earlier, Nyan, was it just shows you a slice of her life. This is probably an everyday thing. Photo shoots. There's a leaked photo out there. They got to put out fire. She has to prepare for her tour. She has an album coming out. There's a single coming out. So it just kind of shows you again how this is for a normal person. You would rip your hair out if you had all these things going on at once. It's hard to imagine someone keeping their head on their shoulders, but we're seeing Jocelyn just kind of rolling through the motions. She seems pretty numb to the leak photo. She seems pretty numb to not hitting the dance choreography. Like she knows she can hit the marks when she needs to. So I guess it does speak to how she's on kind of autopilot at this point of her career, where if this was a first-time artist and if it was a leaked photo of them in a very intimate moment, it could be career ending. But for Jocelyn, she was just like, oh, it's not that bad, right? So maybe that just speaks to, again, where she's at in this career, which, again, I was under the assumption that we were going to see her from her origin story. Like this was like first single, first album. She just hit fame off of this thing, but we're in it. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to kind of get those layers.
Like we're in our comeback phase, really.
Exactly. And which,
could be interesting for sure. But again, as we don't know what like her bit of like fall from grace was, and we're still trying to figure that out. It's just like, oh, it just seems that she's just in between jobs right now, and but hopefully we do get a lot more substance with her character and what exactly what she's trying to accomplish.
And the first half to me was just very kind of mediocre at best. The second half kind of switches gears for me because it gets more laser focused on Jocelyn more, because again, the first half was the photo out there, the choreography, her team trying to put out this fire. It was like so much going on, but it wasn't focused on Jocelyn. The second half, even though the Weeknd is more involved, it's more personal because we get more scenes with her and a little bit more of understanding of how she feels about herself, how she feels about the superficial nature of this song. I would say the second half necessarily didn't save this premiere, but it was definitely the more interesting side of this show, of this premiere episode, than it was in the first half. What about you now? Did you feel like the second half was a little bit more, I guess, personal, a little bit more intriguing than the first for you?
I will agree with you where, the first half was a bit meandering, just, hey, introducing. But once I think the Weeknd, like, gets on the screen and he's introduced, then I'm like, okay, let's see where this is going. Now I do have to say that like his introduction was like not also just wasn't what I was thinking he was going to be introduced. He seems like a nobody, right?
Yes, Tedros. He seems to be a sleamy club owner with his rat tail, his 80s attire. Yeah, someone that I wouldn't think Jocelyn, and it seems to be an age difference. I think in reality, I think Lily and him are maybe 6-5 years age difference. It might maybe more, but I feel like he's like maybe 10 years older than her, which speaks to the whole grooming of him grooming her that we'll talk about. But yeah, he I don't know what she sees in him, but yeah, he looks rat tail.
Yeah, I mean, you know what I was suspecting a little bit? That like dude was a vampire.
Yeah, listen, I wouldn't be surprised if they expose that he has some fetishes of his own and blood. Me and one of them.
I was like, oh, is that what the show's about? Like, is the Weeknd Tedros a vampire, and it's going to be like, because he gives off that demeanor
Yeah, very much so.
like
Wearing
Lucifer or
glasses in the
whatever, you
club at
know.
nighttime, something's going on.
Yeah. But I thought his introduction was weird just because he kind of just like, oh wow, she's here. All right, we're going to be hanging out now. And
Yeah.
I really didn't understand that. Also, like, what made him like, why is he the person that you're going to be taking like music advice from? I thought he was going to be like someone that's like, oh, a
Producer or something.
producer, or like
Right,
someone that's going to
right,
like be putting her career on or whatever. And
right.
you know, I think that's where the season is going. I just thought he was going to be like a bit more like of an established like industry
In the
guy,
industry. Gotcha.
or even like a pop star himself. All right.
Yeah, yeah, no, you know what? I mean, and to be fair too, that might be revealed later on that he tried to get in the industry, but he never hit big because people thought he was a joke, and he looks like an idiot with his rat tail. So maybe he's going to use her to try to get back into the industry from whenever he tried to get famous, but never did. But you know what it reminded me of now? I don't know if you ever watched Pam and Tommy last year on Hulu with Lily James and Sebastian Stan. This scene reminded me a lot of when Tommy first met Pamela Anderson. They were at a club. She was at the height of her career with Baywatch. He was at the height of his career with his band, and like how they just met each other. It was just kind of like, meant to be.
Stars aligned,
yeah. So I don't know if this is a similar situation here, or going back to manipulation and Friends. Her dancer friend was the one who's like, let's go out to this club. She was like very specific about going to this club. So I wonder if like this was all set up, because as this scene is kind of going through and there's the sexual tension, he wants to dance with her. There was some random, again, going back to Euphoria, that character named Mouse, the drug that had the fentanyl and gave it to Rue in season 1. When she was the guy, it was a guy that looked similar to Mouse. He had like a tattoo on the back.
Yeah, right.
He was watching her best friend Layla, which makes it seem like this was all like a targeted situation,
a little
like
bit orchestrated, right?
Yeah, like we're gonna get her in the club. I'm gonna shout her out. I'm gonna make it seem like she's the only person in the club. I'm gonna give her bottles of alcohol. It seemed very purposeful. Now, did you get that?
This is my chance, and I'm going to like dig my claws in.
Yep. And that's what I got
put her
from
on
this.
The spot a little bit. I thought it was going to like go like a different way, where like they were going to like he was going to like slip something in her drink or something like that, or like do something like that. But it seemed like he just like was spitting game, looking like Hustle and Flow with that assistant.
Yeah, I do think it might be revealed that this was an intentional connection between two. Now, whether that was the dancer friend, or if that was maybe her best friend or someone else entirely that might have orchestrated this whole thing to make sure that she was there at the right time and this, that, and the third. But and this is the character here who I was referring to, who's kind of looming in the background and watching the Lila character from afar, like almost like keep an eye on her best friend, because like you mentioned earlier, Nine, right now it seems like Layla's the only one that cares for her. So maybe they knew like we need to get her away from Jocelyn for I can sleep in and make my moves. As this scene is going on, again, they're on the dance floor, they're getting very intimate and things are kind of working to his advantage. He's hitting the marks with her. She's very kind of interested in him. I don't know if it's the rat tail. I don't know if it's the persona. I don't know if it's just the simple thing as giving her attention. As we might find out from Jocelyn, she might just, any attention that you give her is something that she appreciates, because maybe she's so like, I don't know. You would think a pop star gets all the attention in the world, but maybe it's just the attention from certain people that intrigues her from him. But I'm very surprised that she would be interested in a man with a rat tail. He seems to be very, very calculated in his approach, as well, making it come off like he's the way to. And this is just the him targeting her. He was saying the right things, right? He was playing into her ego. He was playing into the idea of like, you're a pop star. You should be having more fun. You're seeing, he's really leaning into her celebrityism. And again, playing into, you would imagine celebrities, they might get full of themselves every now and then, but they like to feel themselves and to hear how awesome they are. So he's really playing into her hand and putting her on his pedestal. And she's really leaning into it. I think that she also, not to put her completely off the rail. I think she enjoys that attention as well. Like she's very much so playing into it because she can have anyone in the world, you know.
Yeah,
honestly.
but maybe like it's because it's coming from someone just outside of her sphere a bit,
right?
like or outside of her like comfort zone, or whatnot. But again, because we are lacking so many details about like what her character motivations are, it's really hard to pin down about like why this is going to be a team that works at all, or like what is it that he saw in her that would, you know, even really, you know, it seems like he's, you know, I can't say that like he's just like a bum or whatever. Like he seems like he's doing very well for himself, right? Like he's got his own club and, you know, his own people or whatnot. So it's like, what is it exactly that's bringing these two together for this pairing?
That's a good point.
And it's still a mystery right now. Is it going to be a mystery that's going to intrigue us for the whole series, the whole season?
That's the
I don't
question.
know. Like, we're going to have to see a very solid second episode for this to you know, for this to be a thing. I think
I agree. And I guess to the character and Weeknd, the only thing I've ever seen him in from an actor perspective was Conjibs. Yeah, he was in. I mean, he was in the film for like 2 seconds. And he was just playing himself. So I guess my next question for you is, Nine, is how did you feel about Mr. Abel's performance as this club owner slash vampire? What did you think about him? Scammer vibes? Did you feel like he had a good game playing up to her ego?
I mean, I think he actually did pretty good. I think he did like on par with everybody else, right? It didn't seem like he was completely coming out of left field with his performance. It's just that the character he plays is in left field. So I hope we will be able to see more from him. I was looking at the, you know, this season on little stinger at the end there, and it did seem like there's going to be some pretty like bigger, you know, emotionally charged moments that he's going to be able to we'll see what he's got.
What he got? Yeah, man. I'm intrigued. Like I said, I know who The Weeknd is. I've heard his songs. He definitely has some bangers. But I don't know much other than the singer. So I'm very curious to know what he can bring to the table with his character. What else, as we talked about earlier, was he a failed artist? Was he a manager of someone that didn't make it big and he's trying to make his way back into the sphere and be maybe the producer that he thought he was, or the artist he thought he was, and he's using Jocelyn as a key to get into the door. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. But to answer my own question, I thought he was fine. He didn't I wasn't like, oh snap. To get Abel in more movies and shows. This dude, that it factor. He didn't really.
It wasn't like a breakout performance or whatever. I was just like, he doesn't seem out of place, and he's holding his own here.
He did his job. He came in to be this creepy scammer. He definitely gives off those vibes, and I thought he did a well enough job to make me say there's enough meat on the bone to say, okay, I see you, Weeknd. It'll be really interesting to see what they do with him moving forward. But speaking of interesting, Nine, and you talked about earlier as far as screenshots, not to get the stream pool, but it is a moment that shows us a little bit of Jocelyn's character in a scene that speaks. I mean, it is, again, trying to take what are they trying to do in this scene? Is it just to be provocative? Is it meant to make you uncomfortable? Is it meant to be to get you on edge? Or is there a story being told? So the scene, Nine, is we see her after the club. She, you know, her and The Weeknd were, you know, having fun in the hallway, and her friend was kind of being a cock block, whatever, and things ended on a hot and heavy matter. But it left Jocelyn kind of like, well, I'm a little excited before I go to bed. Let me go ahead and pleasure myself. And you see her pleasuring herself, Nine. But in this moment, it's a character moment because it seems she's choking herself as she's doing it, which again, for some people are probably like, because I even put on my notes like, okay, what is this scene saying? Is it just to be like, let's be provocative and show her masturbating while choking herself? Or is there like, no, there's something more to Jocelyn. Like why, like she's choking herself. She seems to maybe, you know, when we found out she was in hospital earlier, the mental break, did she put herself in the hospital? Is this her way of pleasuring herself, is having pain being inflicted on her at the same time? So again, it could be surface level, like, oh, this is a little edgy here, getting a little hot and bothered. Or is there a character moment going on here? Your thoughts on, and who would have known on June 4th at 10:19 we'd be talking about the depths and the analyzing a female.
You know, I gotta say, I would say that this probably made me the most uncomfortable. Because like you said, I was like, is this just a surface level thing, or is this like what people were talking about, like, oh, this is just like crude for being crude?
Right.
But I mean, yeah, this is the reason why I love like coming on the show and like just talking about media on like my own channel and everything, is just because when you start to talk it out, right, and you get into the head of like, you know, why, when we start with why,
Exactly,
you really are able to understand like this is like, oh, this is like a self-deprecating character trait, right?
mm-hmm.
And it lends more to why she is going to be you know, hitting up Tedros later, and what about it is that, like, you know, would have even compelled her to like take that photo or you know, have it out there somewhere,
right.
So yeah, again, it is, you know, it is crude. It is definitely
By all
crude.
means.
And I think it can definitely be like glossed over to where like people are just like, yeah, we really don't need
We
to
could have
see
went without
this.
that.
And we could have went without it. But again, we're already, you know, in for a penny, in for a pound, right? And you know, it's like at that point, like, why not? Who cares, right? But yeah, if we're looking at it on the just beneath the surface level, then we got to consider like, what is it about this
Exactly.
scene?
You know, it's art, right? Everything
Mm-hmm.
can be looked at as art, and obviously some art doesn't work for some people. Some art feels to be crude, like you mentioned, or too provocative. But like I said, when I saw it, I'm like, okay, this is what people were talking about being uncomfortable. But then again, I thought about the moments of her, again, the hospital thing, the mental health aspect of it, and her maybe attracting herself or gravitating herself towards these people that aren't meant for her, or doesn't mean that means to do her harm. But I think this scene just kind of shows you that she is not innocent. She is not a virgin. She's not, you know, someone that's, you know, you're the hero per se of the story. She has an edge to her. She has she has kinks. She has sexual preferences that she prefers to deal with. And I think this kind of speaks to that. And we see this again, this kind of strangulation is something that gets her off. Which again speaks to the whole idea of like, she likes to have this with this pleasurement, that she likes to feel pain while pleasuring herself. And again, we'll see that maybe later in the show, that whenever she does have you know, these high moments, that she has to find a way to bring herself down or to hurt herself.
You mentioned something there that I'm finding interesting. It's like, is she the hero? I think you just said. And I'm like, yeah, like, again, are we rooting for her really as an audience member? Are we even supposed to be taking this episode like to where we're rooting for her? Like, who? And I don't feel that. Like, I don't feel like I really care about like you know, what her successful motivation would be at this point, right? And I think that's probably what is failing about the pilot for me about this first episode.
Who's that character to root for?
Yeah, I'm like, do I care really about what's going to happen?
It's a great point. It almost makes me go back to the whole hospital wristband thing. Like, if we would have maybe opened the show with her getting out of the hospital, like going back again, I hate to bring up Euphoria, but one of the hooks of Euphoria was seeing Rue destroying herself. But when she came out of the rehab, and when she saw her sister, who we know her sister was the one that found her, almost that killed herself, you're introduced to the character at a very vulnerable point in their life. And now you're like, regardless of what they do for the rest of the episode, the rest of the show, as an audience member, you're like, man, I just want to see this person win, because man, we saw them at such a low point. And hopefully we can see them come out of it.
We want them to get better.
Exactly. But we open this episode with her at work, right? And just going through the motions. And there's really nothing like, that's the only thing that was interesting again, was the whole idea of like, you know, what's going on with the hospital situation, the whole photo thing, just seemed to not bother her at all. Like, is she at a mental spot where she just, things are not phasing her, and she's looking for a Talos, or looking for someone that can disrupt her life, because she just needs that right now, because she's feeling like at a low point. So they could have done it where they could have hooked us in to make us, which again, it is a trope to have the empathy card being played by the audience. It's almost manipulating the audience. Like, this is your entry point to the characters, to feel bad for them. So now, even if they do terrible things, you always have that in the back of your mind. Like, well, damn, Rue, I just want Rue to win because number one is Zendaya, and we all love her. But then it's like, you met her when she was a baby, her dad died of cancer. She's a drug addict. She's a teen. She's going through a lot, and it gives you that sympathy card. But I don't know. Maybe it's maybe it was another way to introduce us to Jocelyn to make us root for her. Because like you said, man, I wasn't necessarily in this episode like, yeah, Jocelyn, get yours, go girl.
Right, yeah. And with her whole like music career and everything, I'm like, yeah, she seems to be like doing fine, you know, like so,
beautiful house. I mean,
beautiful house, whatever. Vanity Fair interviews. It doesn't seem like the whole picture situation is going to completely like crush her career or anything, or she's going to lose it all from that. So, I'm really curious to see like how are they going to make us like care about who this person is at the end of the day.
I agree. Wrapping up the episode after the moments of Jocelyn and her controlling the narrative when she's talking to the journalist from Vanity Fair, and the journalist is a fan of Jocelyn's, and she kind of ends the interview and just say, "Hey, I don't supposed to say these things, but I'm really rooting for you, man. I'm a fan of your work." And she's like, "No, put out that narrative." She cuts the recorder like, "Put that out there if you want." You know, if you want to be like,
it's like, I will never say this in front of everybody, but I think you're great and you're cool. It's like, well, yeah, why did you have to stop the why do you have to stop the recording to say that to me? That's a little bit crazy.
Speaks to how like the media, more than the artist, can control a media, like a person's career. Like I remember watching a film that got bombed at the box office, Damien Chazelle's Babylon last year. And it was like this subplot involving Brad Pitt's career and him talking to Jean Smart, and she was a journalist. And this is obviously during the 1920s or whatnot. So obviously social media wasn't big. But the thing was, like, the journalists, the magazines, the newspapers, they control the narrative. Like if they want you to look bad in the media on a Wednesday afternoon, they can drop an article and just almost destroy your career, especially in today's society with social media, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, as you mentioned earlier, AI. There's so many different ways to destroy someone's career. And when you have a moment like this where the journalist is like, "I actually like you," well, why don't you say that out there?
Right, yeah.
Because if the audience knows I like you, then maybe my article looks like I'm being friendly or making a narrative to make you seem to be more than what you are. So it's just crazy to me, man. And this scene was a scene that stood out to me because it just kind of shows how the media has to almost put on a facade just as much as the artist does.
Kind of like a little bit of the tidbits that we got about Jocelyn's backstory. Did your mom used to live in this house? That was like kind of interesting. But again, I was just like, they're really kind of like padding this thing out. Like these scenes are starting to feel a lot like just like nothing scenes. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like what's the importance to the narrative? Understand like how it is adding to Jocelyn's story.
As we kind of wrap it up now, we get a really kind of, again, you mentioned earlier how Layla she can rely on. They have a really kind of a moment where she's like, "Do you like my music? Do you like my song?" She's just being a nice friend. Like, "Yeah, it's cool. You know, it's different from your other songs. It speaks differently." And this is where we see Johnson's like, "I'm talking about if you want to be with me, you better bring the bag," or I can't remember the exact lyrics or whatever. I guess I could say interested to see if this is a true relationship and if we know that she is a true friend. But again, knowing how the Weeknd's character is going to maybe split them apart because she is the only one that actually cares for her and cares about her well-being. So I'm very intrigued to see where this goes. But as we wrap it up now, we get Blade walking up in his all black outfit. Man, I'm like, bro, this dude coming in. Oh, which part I didn't want to forget this. It was always like, what does this mean? Like, why were they watching in the background when they had the conversation? We were watching Basic Instinct. There was a subtle line of like, she killed him. Michael Douglas character and the Sharon Stone character. So I don't know if that's going to play. I don't know if you guys have seen not Fatal Attraction, but Basic Instinct. Yes. If that's potentially foreshadowing of Jocelyn maybe killing, the Weeknd's character or vice versa. So I'm very intrigued to. A good movie too, by the way. If you guys never seen Basic Instinct, she's So Jocelyn tells her friend to let him in, and to players got to play. She's like, "Hey, let him wait, have him walk around. I'll come down when I'm ready." And looking at these character moments, she tells she's wearing the high heels, and her friend's like, "Why are you wearing those high heels? You're in your own home. Why aren't you? You're trying to go all out." She's like, "Because I want to look taller than him."
Yeah.
And the reason I took that line a little bit later now is because as they're in the music room a little bit later, he immediately takes her shoes off, which to me was a power move because, again, in Jocelyn's mind, she wants to control the situation. She wants to be taller than him. But as soon as they're in this intimate moment in this situation, he controls the situation because he immediately takes her shoes off and makes her lower than him, which I think, again, just speaks to him controlling the situation at hand. But as we wrap it up, man, we end with her playing this song. He's just like, it's fine. Do you like it? No, I got a bunch of yes people. The studio likes it, yada, yada, yada. And ultimately, he again, when he's making his moves, got the ice on her legs, getting all hot and steamy. And he's, teasing her, right? This is, again, the manipulation of her is like, I'm not going to have sex with you right away. I'm going to bait you to, you're going to want me. It's not going to be the other way around. Exactly. He's controlling the whole thing. So he eventually gets to the point where he hears a song and he has a note for her. And it's that she doesn't sing as though that she is someone that is that provocative. She's not a sexual. She's not a person that can lean to those notes, those levels. So then he takes off her scarf. We know that she likes to strangle herself or choke herself during these sexual moments. He puts it around her neck and she's hard of breathing, which she seems to be into. And he gives her breath. He gives her the way to sing. So, yeah, we have a demonstration here, guys.
It is a recreation for the scene.
Yeah, let me.
Yeah,
very much.
It gets kind of ridiculous.
People got their kinks. I'm not one to judge, but hey, that's what works for her. But he puts it over her. She's harder breathing. But again, he's the one that pokes the hole in the scarf, and he's like, okay, now you can sing. So it just goes to show you the dominance from him taking off the shoes immediately and let her know you're not on my level. I'm above you. Then she has the, okay, are we about to have sex? Nope, I'm not. We're not about to do it. You're just going to be on my terms. Again, controlling the whole narrative, and again, opening her mouth with the knife there. End of the episode 9. So thoughts on this ending, and then just wrapping up to on a level of interest. Is there enough on this first episode that makes you want to come back and see where this story goes?
Flat out, not really. No. That I'm going to super interested in who these characters are. Again, what does Tedros know about anything about music? Why does his opinion matter? Who cares? Why would Jocelyn even care about his opinion? What exactly is she looking for? Rather than just kind of being outside of her sphere or her range or whatever. But why would it be this character that she's going to be going for to advice? Again, it's just what is anything that's happening, right?
Yeah.
And who are we rooting for?
The only thing, because I just always, I feel bad when people are getting taken advantage of. And again, based on this first episode, on a surface level, it looks very obvious that the Weeknd's character is taking advantage of someone that might not be in the best state of mind, that's just coming out of losing her mom. Just naturally inside of me, I just feel like the way the Weeknd's taking advantage of her. But we don't, like you mentioned now, we don't know Jocelyn. We don't know if she is maybe taking advantage of him. We don't know where this is going to go.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe, and not from she's obviously a much bigger star than he is, but just from I'm going to just take what I can from you. You're going to give me a moment in my life that might be dysfunctional because I want to be dysfunctional right at this point in my life. I want to shake things up. So who's to say that? So I guess that's the episode is when you walked away from this episode, like you said, Nine, I don't think none of us was rooting for the Weeknd, but were we rooting for Jocelyn? And I think there's nothing besides her just being someone. Again, I'm intrigued about the mental health and when people get taken advantage of. Again, her crew seems to be taking advantage of her. Her friend seems to be the only one that cares for her. That's the only human thing that's keeping me attached to I want her to hopefully maybe find some type of peace. But outside of those things, the show didn't really give me enough to be yes, Jocelyn, you're making a terrible decision, but hopefully there's enough there to see that you can. I don't see that.
Yeah,
so this is something like a repetitive thing that she does, where she finds these destructive people or activities that she engages in. That whenever she's at a low point, she wants to hurt herself. She wants to be destructive. She wants to, make things chaotic. So We'll see, man.
I think this show would have benefited from a 2-episode premiere. I know it probably would have been like,
it's a good point.
Really
like a
long,
2-hour
but
premiere.
it's just that like they didn't give us enough to
There's
make
no
us
hook.
care about the character. There really is no hook. And if its legacy right now is going to be like, oh, you know, titties, right? Like that is literally it's going to be the legacy, and it doesn't it doesn't have like anything else. Like this was supposed to be the episode where everyone has to kind of like eat their words about like, oh, it's just sexy for sex sake, right?
It didn't do that.
It did not do that at all.
I agree with you, Nine. It was there were seeds planted that were like, okay, again, little hints of like, okay, this is an interesting character moment. This is interesting why she's choking herself or pleasuring herself. This is interesting that she doesn't really care about the photo being out there. But outside of that, man, it's just like, how many times have we seen pop stars, celebrities in general, just be self-destructive? And it's just like, you have the world at the palm of your hands, and I would hope to find out to be in that position of power. But you always, when we see like these celebrities getting themselves into scandals and find themselves in destructive behavior, you're just like, what, why? Right. So I'm hoping that the show explores that why. You mentioned Britney Spears earlier, and I obviously I'm very familiar with her career and what she meant in that time of her career. But what was the reason why Britney Spears snapped? What was her mental break? Was it too much pressure? Was it trying to always be a megastar? So that's where I want the show to maybe explore. What is it that makes, everyone's obviously different, but what is it that's going to make Jocelyn crack, break, redeem herself, not redeem herself, go down this path? And this first episode didn't do that. So we'll see, man. Again, I'm always an advocate of giving shows 3 episodes. And I don't think this, to go back on, like, I don't think this was a shitty premiere episode. It's just that knowing that Sam Levinson, Euphoria was the big theme tonight. I think about episode 1, 9. The reason I fell in love with Euphoria episode 1 was just like, there's a lot going on, but the hook was, again, we learned who Nate Jacobs was, just the stereotypical jock, but then we find out the guy at the beginning who was hooking up with Jules is Nate's dad. You're like, oh, okay, there's a lot going on.
There's so much crazy shit going on. And then this is like,
this show didn't have that like mic drop, like, oh, what's going on? Is he a vampire? But again, like you said, Nine, if it would have been, some shows do benefit from a back-to-back, like, this is the setup, this is where we're going. And this first episode didn't really have that. But like I said, I always like to give shows 3 episodes just because I feel like some creators take their shows and make them like mini movies, like limited series, where the first episode is the introduction, second episode is the situation, third episode is like, oh, what's going to happen from the rest of the season. So we'll see what happens next week. The trailers seem, fine. But we'll see, Nine. But neither here nor there, man. I got more out of this conversation than I did in this episode, and I appreciate you being here and breaking it down with me, as well as everyone in the chat. So we're going to stay on for a couple more minutes on the live stream of the after show. But as far as the breakdown goes, let us know in the comments what worked, what didn't work, what did we miss, what did we maybe not expand upon more. Let us know what you thought of this first episode. And the question I asked Nine earlier, will you be back next week? Will you watch to see what happens with Jocelyn and this vampire and her friends being vampires and sucking the blood out of her? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed today's commentary, like, share, comment, subscribe to myself. And Nine's information can be found in the description of this video. That is definitely her. I'm going to pull it up here.
And
yeah, right there.
Yeah.
That is her. Good catch.
I would have not noticed that.
Yeah, unless I'm probably tomorrow on TikTok. Did you guys see?
Right.
Yeah. So hey, clip this out, man. I'm gonna make it viral on TikTok.
Right.
I'm gonna give you a shout out too, man. But no, that's a great catch. Great catch. I did not see that. But guys, appreciate you watching tonight's stream, and we will catch you on the next video. Peace out.